Hello and welcome everybody to this first game, the curtain raiser of the SCC for phase number 2. My name is Judas Priestley. Joining me today will be Kaizo, and we will be bringing you the Kaolin Wardens versus the Aaru Scorpions. Now, it's a lot to be on the line here, right? This is the beginning of the very, very long road to the World Finals from the SCC route, but we've got a very, very special team coming in for the first time back to the SCC. What do you have to say about them today, Kaizo?
Oh, I'm so excited, man. These are some of my favorite players that we have here in the SCC. Obviously, we're to remain unbiased on the broadcast, but I should make it pretty well known that these are guys that I'm fairly familiar with. Evermed's a guy that I've played with before. Picoways is the GOAT of in-houses. He's the one that put all those together for the PTS server for us. And Tubahh, actually, fun fact, like 7 years ago, was the guy that originally got me into the competitive scene and got me interested in competitive Smite. These guys are coming in here to the SCC, like you said, for the first time. Some of these names we've seen before on different rosters, but as far as this particular combination of players, this is going to be the first time that we get to see them. And they're going to be up against the Aaru Scorpions, which is, it's going to be a difficult undertaking, but I think that they might be up for it.
Yeah, of course, Aaru Scorpions were previously in SCC for Phase 1, have had a couple of roster changes, though, which can always make things a bit more questionable. Let's actually see how that all pans together, as we do throw in two picks and bans. But like I was saying, when you've had a couple of changes coming up against a new roster, sometimes it can be hard to figure out exactly what's going to gel. But I think both of these teams will actually be quite happy with the team that they're coming up against, first of all, because, like we said, a brand new team and a team with roster changes, you're kind of happy you're not coming up against one of the front runners of Phase 1.
Yep, and a lot of these guys probably pretty familiar with each other too. I know that a lot of our Latin American players are pretty well acquainted with one another and how they play, and a lot of LATAM talent on this team. That is a region absolutely packed to the gills with talent, not only at the SPL level with guys like Netrioid, but also here at the SEC level. We got players like Bayro, Migiiiiii, I believe, also in that LATAM region. So a lot of them going to have some familiarity here. It wouldn't surprise me necessarily to see some target bans, some things that not necessarily meta dependent being taken away, but rather just things that are known to be in the god pool that you want to get off the table as soon as possible. Doesn't look like we have any of that right now, though. The closest thing I would maybe argue is that Wukong might be a target ban, but everything else is pretty much shaping up according to how the meta sort of shaking down right now.
Of course, we've spoken plenty so far about out-of-game stuff, but moving on to the in-game stuff, this is, of course, being played on the previous patch, so we are not yet at the most recent changes, notably some buffs to some recipes non-existent, so I would expect to see plenty of Bountiful Bow and Golden Gooseberries coming out. Also, a lack of Cerberus, sadly, not going to be coming through this week, at least I expect. You know, someone might throw something out of the woodwork, but you never really know what to see, but still expecting to see lots of Pele, of course, those magical ADCs, only the Freya taken off the board at the moment, and
Pele.
Look at that, like clockwork, Pele locked in top pick. It's just hard to argue with top pick and Pele at the moment.
It really is. I think that Pele, Camazotz you can see banned away there. I think that Kama is in the conversation for the #1 jungler right now. I think that Pele and he are kind of in that top 1, top 2 slot. They're both very high burst damage, can get involved very early on. Traditionally want to go some form of stacking item that might delay their power spike a bit, but ordinarily, if you need them early, they can be there early. Very high burst damage, as I said. A lot of sustain from these characters as well. And the thing about Camazotz in particular, if you're wondering, well, why does one get banned away versus one get taken? Camazotz can banish himself and continue to do DPS against something like this Olorun that the Aaru Scorpions have locked in here, making him much safer when it comes to diving a backline. You don't have to worry about the damage coming to turn around on you. You don't have to worry about suddenly getting bursted or CC'd when you're going for that kill. Whereas Pele, she has the same overkill level of damage, still has that high sustain, high mobility, but she at least has to be somewhere you can theoretically fight back. You have to be able to maintain that certain threshold of damage to continue to threaten that backliner all the way to the point that you get the kill, as opposed to punching that eject button, getting that get out of jail free card, and just walking away with the kill for free.
Yeah, of course, we've seen that followed up with Amaterasu, again, highly prioritized. We saw a lot of Amaterasu earlier today, in fact. Still a very popular god, but of course was popular last weekend as well. So not surprised to see that. Again, you mentioned the Olorun. vitally important. Surprised to see Martichoras coming through, though. This is a god that has had some, to put it bluntly, oppressive moments. Recently,
sure.
in particular, has been such a strong god. Now, not so much so. Now the priority seems to have shifted away. So why would you think maybe that the Wardens have opted to prioritize it so early?
It's a flex pick. It's one that Nog can take in the mid. It's one that Tubahh can take ADC. They don't have to pilot it in either one. And when you're picking something in the top 3, unless you're getting something that you absolutely know is the top pick in that certain role, like, excuse me, Amaterasu is a good example. Olorun's a good example. You're comfortable taking those that early on and showing your hand there because of how strong that pick is going to be. Whereas something like the Martichoras, he might not be top in his role, but you don't necessarily know what you want to fill that slot yet. He's one that you can kind of decide later on what you're going to go with and then bait out some of these bans toward the solo lane. Because again, Aaru Scorpions don't want to ban mids or ADCs because they might be wasted bans if the god ends up going into one of those 2 roles. And speaking of the bans that the Aaru Scorpions have here, Judas, I want to talk about this Hades ban, because we've been seeing a lot more of this character much more recently, and it spawns from the prominence of Amaterasu. Amaterasu is kind of the new era Wukong right now after she got that buff to give her some attack speed when she has the 1 active. That Divine Presence gives her a lot of lane pressure. It also gives her very high burst damage on these objectives and ability to play around the macro of the map. The only thing that shuts her down very effectively is something with equally or higher clear than her. Wouldn't you know it, Hades is pretty darn good at doing that clearing stuff, so I like taking that one away. They do give up the Nike to do so, but I think it's a much more pleasant lane matchup that RelentlessOne's going to be
Simply gazing at us.
And Nike, of course, pretty prominent at dealing with these magical ADCs as well, namely Freya. Of course, Freya not in this game, has been banned away, but equally so against Olorun. I think, that barrier, if anything, the slow-mo field would just make the barrier better at dealing with Olorun, so it's a fantastic pickup. Comboing that with a Morrigan as well. Morrigan has tons of good options here, even just on the side of the Wardens, but including the Aaru Scorpions as well. Like, if the Sanctified Field comes down, you can just drop one of your own, It's really potentially a strong pickup. But woohoo! That's an Arachne in a competitive Smite game. GuyJ, break it down.
It's fun, man. It's really interesting the way this character works now, because for a long time, Arachne's identity was you get the webs on somebody and you have to one-shot them or else you got to get out of there. You go up in a Nightcrawler, you walk away and try to get out alive, basically. But she saw a very recent buff to not only give her a 3rd spider on those webs, but also, perhaps even more critically, that attack speed buff on her too, the stun, no longer expires when you stun somebody. It used to be you only got that benefit until the stun went off. But now that you actually get that persisting through the full duration, it greatly increases how quickly you can kill somebody. And on top of that, they made the stun come out 1 auto attack earlier. It used to be 1, 2, 3 stun, and now it's just 1, 2 stun. Still catches players off guard, much more difficult to deal with in burst. You have to be much more expectant of it now, so it's going to be an interesting one to watch for sure. I'm very excited to see what Migiiiiii does with this one.
All eyes on Migiiiiii, and how can they pull it off? Let's put our eyes on the game as we transition in over to find out who will come out on top between the Kaolin Wardens and the Aaru Scorpions. So everything about as we would expect, nobody in these unusual positions, but are you noticing anything in particular standing out at the moment? Actually, looks like we might be having a Jing in the middle lane.
Jing mid is less weird, or excuse me, is more weird than the Olorun mid would be. Like, I think that either one is probably fine. You don't really hate having either one. They're both late game hyper carries. They both require a decent amount of safety, though I'd argue that obviously Jing can get out of dodge a lot easier, and that's probably why you have her in the lane where things can come at you a little bit more quickly and a little bit more unexpectedly. But GuyJ in the ADC is probably the reason that you went for this orientation. You want to have this Olorun in the long lane where he can pressure that shield buff particularly well. You can ward much safer for him, and make sure that he's not prone to the ganks from Picoways too early on. You don't have to worry about Evermed rotating out unexpectedly. It's really a matter of we wanted Jing and we also wanted Olorun, and by golly, Judas, we can't put them both in the dual lane together.
I don't know. I'd like to see it. I mean, it's about as spicy as an Arachne in the jungle in a competitive game. Now, notably, of course, Arachne did actually receive a small nerf after this patch, coming into the current patch, which is not the one that we're playing on. Just got to make that clear. So Arachne still has all of that strength that, you know, did warrant a nerf. So it will be interesting to see maybe exactly why that nerf was warranted. I know a lot of people sort of disagreed with that, but it might be our first example of it. No, Migiiiiii just opting to go for the cooldown buff instead. Bruno, happy about it, takes us up. There is the cocoon stun coming out. Wow, look at the damage coming out already. Bruno going to have to be a lot more wary of that spider.
And you know that it's there. Like, everybody at this point has gotten to the point where you understand the stun comes out faster, I gotta be ready for it. But it still doesn't feel like you can be ready for it, Judas, because those auto attacks, the hit chain is so fast. It's not 1-1-1. It's like 0.678, 0.436, or whatever it is. It's very fast auto attacks on the front end, which means that stun comes out basically instantaneously. You don't get to react to it anymore. You have to preempt that in some way. And I do want to draw attention to the fact, while we have a bit of a lull in the action here, we'll watch Evermed try to zone out the wave here and left. We saw the junglers split up there. You can see Pico went to try to gank dual lane, but a good ward from Geno spotted that out and prevented that from happening. Hang on, dual lane action.
That's purification beads down from GuyJ. Now, I'll have to see if anyone can capitalize on it, because Pico, surely the one to be looking for it, but it's tough still to get too close to an Olorun. So, GuyJ in some difficulties, but does have a plenty of sustain in this dual lane partnership for the Aaru Scorpions. But yeah, right now, looks like Nog is going to try to make a play. Not sure this one's going to go, but it's maybe worth the attempt. Invisibility comes down early, doesn't even get the steal. Oh, does get the steal. Oh, sick. Good play from Nog. Yeah, I mean, look, you don't get the kill, but you get something for it.
You gotta get something if you're Nog there, because take a look at his own red buff. It got invaded by his own jungler. I mean, he's just not going to be getting XP for that one. So it's good that he at least gets a little bit somewhere and strips away some pretty critical farm from GuyJ there, who wants to stay as far up in lane as humanly possible. Olorun, a character that pretty good early on, gets a lot of benefit out of that wave clear. The safety at level 5 with the Sanctified Field pretty high. But obviously all of these magical ADCs... Wow, another steal for the Kaolin Wardens. Shout out Evermed on that one. But all of these magical ADCs want to get to the late game stage as quickly as possible. They have their little stop gags to get them there and make them feel okay until that point. But make no bones about it, this character wants to be late game as often and early as possible. Pico looking for Barrow, won't be able to get it. It's a lot of this jungle pressure from both of these junglers so far. Split up on the map is where I'm going with this. It was Migiiiiii in the right lane, it was Pico in the left lane. And I think a lot of that is just Pico not wanting to bug Migiiiiii too much on this Arachne. If you bite down too hard on that spider, you're going to get bitten back. And I think that, at least for the time being, until you get a couple of items stacked up, you get that power build online for Picoways, going for something slower with the Soul Eater. Migiiiiii probably does just kill him if they find each other in the jungle.
Ooh, well, Riven's Rebuke comes out. Evermed's the target, but hold on with the Sanctified Fields as well. The CC chain's pretty good. The slow dash to escape, but will be enough for Evermed to get out alive. No jungle presence, of course, as Migiiiiii had back to base. So, a couple of skirmishes back and forth. No team getting a significant edge just yet, but with the late game prowess of the Aaru Scorpions mid lane and jungler, surely you'd be expecting them to get aggressive early, as Picoways is trying to do, but Migiiiiii on the Arachne is certainly not the one you want to fight up against. Never mind, Pico wants to take the fight, ends up just fighting a couple of small spiders. Nog was nearby. That will just be that for now. It's an invade for Picoways.
Yeah, Pico doesn't go for that if Nog isn't at least nearby. Like I was just saying, I'm pretty sure Migiiiiii just outright wins that 1v1, but might have to eat my words here. Pico's still pushing up. Migiiiiii is on rotation to try to defend this buff, but Kaolin Warden's still going for it.
A slight level lead for Pico. That is the clap of the walls to signify the end of that fight. Migiiiiii does their duty as a jungler and protects the purple buff for GuyJ. So Another small win, but I think if you are the Kaolin Wardens, you're probably quite happy keeping the Arachne on her side of the map, right? The worst thing you can have with a jungle like that is that they're just running amok in your jungle, stealing away your farm. So keeping Migiiiiii over there is probably part of the game plan right now.
They say that the best offense is, or excuse me, the best defense is a good offense. And if you can keep, like you said, Migiiiiii defending his own farm as Geno. What is with these steals this game, man? There is no buff on this map that feels safe right now for either one of these teams. I mean, we've had Evermed has stolen a buff, Geno's stolen a buff, Nnog has stolen a buff. I don't think anybody's not stolen a buff at this point. But going back to the point about the Arachne, you're absolutely right. Migiiiiii wants to be aggressive and pushed up in the enemy jungle, invading those back camps, getting that shaman camp invade as often as possible. But in a situation where, a cute little trick there from Bruno, in a situation where Migiiiiii has to defend his own camps because of how aggressively the Kaolin Wardens are playing, he doesn't get to play as aggressively. It's kind of deterrent by way of just even more aggression. And it has worked out for them so far, but our Scorpions are starting to shore up some of that gold deficit.
Yeah, it's starting to shore it up. You know, we're seeing it just literally 100 gold in it. Again, it's just camp invades back and forth. You know, Migiiiiii trying to evade Picoways on the other side. Doesn't really get anything there. NotGeno, first support to make the rotation all the way to the middle lane. But there's not really a lot going on here. Jing versus Morrigan. Probably one of the biggest snooze fests of a mid lane I can think of. But GuyJ certainly won't be snoozing. Has to drop the Sanctified Fields. Big cooldown off the table. And maybe an opportunity for the Kaolin Wardens to look at the left-hand side.
And Evermed's been playing around the shield buff pretty consistently so far, and it's pretty standard for supports. You typically want to lock that one down as often as possible. Your other option, of course, being to play around the cooldown buff on right-hand side as Picoways looks for a gank on RelentlessOne here. He doesn't seem to know.
It's a sick bait coming through, has baited as long as he could Bruno. There's the jump in, there's the knockup, and the volcanic lightning will seal the deal for RelentlessOne. Migiiiiii, nowhere to be found. Maybe a blue buff invade, though, coming out from Geno. But that's going to be that. Oh, hold on. It's another trap being set. A rebuke over the wall. Fantastic play. And this is just, at this point, Pico, just stand there and take it. You got to accept your fate with such a sick play like that. But Bruno, not willing to accept the blue buff being stolen away, unfortunately, doesn't have a choice.
I swear I saw a crit somewhere there. I might be crazy. I don't see any crit in this game, Judas, but maybe it was just how quick that burst was. More burst went down here in the mid lane onto Geno. Transformation! Oh!
Here comes the volcanic lightning yet again, and there is Nnog picking up a kill onto Geno. Still tons of damage coming out. Bayroneri very low, but is still a Jingwei. I feel safe enough to bat that one out. But, you know, we talked about how good Pele is of a god. Just pick two of them, you know? Nnog showing off what Pele can do there.
Yeah, Pele, incredible burst damage early, even with a slower build with the Solier. I mean, not a whole lot of power to work with on this item. It's mostly your sustain option that keeps you topped up for extended engagements, particularly in situations where the enemy team doesn't rush into the anti-heal. And for whatever reason, doesn't look like the Aaru Scorpions are doing that. Although I guess, Judas, that's kind of the second edge to this Aaru Scorpions draft. You got the double-edged sword. Edge number 2 is the fact that they don't apply anti-heal very well at all. I mean, usually your mid laner has a Divine Ruin, but your mid laner is a Jingwei, and he's not going to be building Toxic Blade, so that's kind of out of the question. You're really relying on Geno to maybe get some kind of Divine Ruin later on in the game, perhaps, or otherwise, it's only RelentlessOne that will be shutting down the healing from the Kaolin Wardens. And there's a lot of it. I mean, we've got Pele with not only the Soul Eater, but also naturally the sustain inherent in the kit. Same thing with Tubahh on this Martichoras. Very high sustain god. You've got Terra ult as well to contend with. That's a lot of healing that is currently going unanswered by the Aaru Scorpions in the build path. They're going to have to find some kind of answer to that before this teamfight stage, and actually looks like teamfight might be coming sooner than we might think, because a deep proxy here from RelentlessOne means that could be rotating and looking for something nefarious. There was a grouping around the Gold Fury by the Aaru Scorpions, but seems to just be a bait in the mid lane.
Well, Beacon is on its way soon. RelentlessOne already in the middle lane, but can't really select the target right there. Could the Aaru Scorpions? And I mean, there's a blue buff to be had, and that seems to be the next port of call, but Bruno walks into some traffic. I wonder if they realize quite how much danger they might be in, but that is a fantastic leap to get away, but there is the cocoon coming through. There is the Sentinel of Zeus. They're really committing to this. It's RelentlessOne, but no more than that to be had. Pico and Evermed opting to hunt on the left-hand side of the map instead, but not opting to take the attempt at the Gold Fury. Everyone's still sort of feeling their way into this game.
And everybody feeling around each other here in the mid lane. Barrow's in a bit of an awkward spot. Will dash out there and should be fine. But this is kind of how a lot of top play looks right now, Judas. You have one side of the map being controlled by one team, the Kaolin Wardens, with an absolute lockdown on the Gold Fury side of the map. Whereas the Aaru Scorpions playing very comfortably around the solo lane. They got those blue buff invades off. They've been invading that shaman camp a couple of different times. RelentlessOne is completely comfortable to just proxy as deep as he needs to be able to rotate over to the left-hand side if something does go down over there. It's basically split right down the middle for which team controls which side of the map. And that's such an interesting way to play the map, whereas you have the option to fight into where your opponent is the strongest and shut them down. The developing meta, the consistent theme, seems to be instead just get strong on your own terms and then use your weight where you can.
Well, the Aaru Scorpions deciding to throw their weight onto this first beacon now. Evermed looking to step on there. Oh, fantastic placement there. That's really cool, but it will not net anything, unfortunately, as RelentlessOne had also rotated over. This is a 5-man grouping over at the Gold Fury, and all the way on the right-hand side is Bruno pushing way too high up. Tubahh is alone, stepping in. There's a River's Rebuke. The Aaru Scorpions do secure this Gold Fury. How does the fight look after the fact, though? Now it is the Kaolin Wardens trying to make up for it. Volcanic Lightning comes in. The massive Sanctified Field, though, will slow down all of this aggression, but still diving ever onwards are the Wardens. Can they find anyone? RelentlessOne is the lowest health target. Under the tier 1 tower they go. GuyJ now caught by nnog. Nice stun comes through. That's 1 kill. They're going to need a bit more than that to make up for it, and instead, Bayro will pick up nnog. Now RelentlessOne, low health, slithers out from the action. Will get themselves to some safety. Evermed is caught in a really tough spot, though, within their own walls, and Migiiiiii slices them down. Aaru Scorpions come away with a dominant victory.
And a 2 for 2 looks like at the end of the day there. No, 1 for 2 in favor of the Aaru Scorpions. So pretty much all spades all across the board for them. They get the Fury, they get the fight after the fact. GuyJ kind of caught in an unfortunate spot there at the end. I mean, if you're an Olorun, you're trying to, I think the wording you used was slither your way away from a fight.
Right.
It's never going to look too good for you when a Morrigan is running the cutoff, and they get excellent pathing there from Nog and the rest of the boys in the Kaolin Wardens to at least get something for their troubles. But I don't know what the Wardens thought was going on there. Bruno very clearly was not ready for that Gold Fury fight. Maybe they thought the Scorpions just go for the beacon and then go to back up, but they did not do that, Judas. They very much went for the full Gold Fury, and their burst is quite good. It helps that GuyJ, after the fact, gets, like you said, a fantastic Sanctified Field to help peel everybody off and slow down the onslaught from the Kaolin Wardens. They had a freight train coming in, and it just unfortunately got caught in a time dilation field, as freight trains often seem to do.
I mean, I was assuming you were going for some sort of derailment there, but it didn't exactly derail for the Wardens. They did get in, did find the pick they were looking for, but it took them so long. You know, just at that point, the Aaru Scorpions were able to reset and recover just enough to pick up 2 kills on the back of that. So that's first real battle going on, and slightly in favor of the Scorpions. Of course, that Gold Fury does make things a lot better, but the gold lead's still only like 1,000, if that, not even quite that. So still neck and neck across the board. But you would say it still benefits the Aaru Scorpions, as they do have this sort of double basic attack damage style backline, which, I mean, it's only going to get better as the game gets longer.
Yeah, definitely very good around team fights. And hang on a second, Naga's in very much danger.
Whoa, a lot of danger, but just about alive. Now Picoways, the real Pele, shows up and shows what Pele can do. Slams down Arachne, but now gets lifted to the sky and cut down themselves by NotGeno. So the fight's still going okay for the Aaru Scorpions. In fact, you trade your jungler for the other jungler quite often. Again, especially if you're looking to bring this game to late.
And they're going to try to break into this tier 1 tower, but the defense from the Wardens, at least so far, is pretty significant, at least enough to keep them away. Surprised that Nog managed to live there, holds on to both the beads and the Aegis, just uses the transformation and Pele ults on out. Had probably less than 100 HP, Judas, if I'm being honest with you, but managing to hold on to both of those relics and only trade the ult means that the Wardens still have the option to play around this next upcoming Fury. I think that if you lose both of those, then that Fury respawning in just about 20 seconds or so is going to be an every single time losing fight for you. Your Morrigan is just too susceptible to being smothered, to being covered by RelentlessOne, Migiiiiii getting walled off by Geno. But now that he has both relics available, I mean, they can look to fight around here. I don't think that the Aaru Scorpions are going to look to just jam this one in because the opportunity just was not made available by Nog. So good patience there on both the relics, giving them at least the opportunity to fight here. And they made the mistake of not bringing Bruno one time to this Fury, and doesn't look like they're going to make that again.
Looks like both solo laners are resetting and planning on coming back. In fact, we already see Bruno marching on up, as does RelentlessOne. Now, the current positioning is in favor of the Wardens, but Scorpions are fully aware of this by virtue of the Oracle, so we'll have the time, have the health bar of the only Fury, and there's not really any good secure on the map, but there's the Sanctified Fields, comes down, and there goes the Fury already. Now, GuyJ picking up the first kill instead. Evermed goes down early in this fight, and now what can the rest of the team do? Nog does trade back, but still a ton of damage goes the way of the Kaolin Wardens, and they do drop 2. Now, the Wardens do pick up that gold Fury, but they do lose 2 in the process. Trade 1 is just about okay. Looks like this tier 1 tower might be under threat next.
And hang on, RelentlessOne dashes out on the left. He might not be out of dodge, but doesn't look like Nog wants to chase that one any deeper. You are absolutely right, though. Tier 1 tower next on the chopping block. 3 members grouped up, though, for the Kaolin Wardens. Once again, not willing to give this one away, take away the safety from their mid laner. Instead, going to chase out potentially to this Pyromancer, Judas. Only Geno looking to stick around. Could we see another steal?
Oh, I believe it. You know, how much does that Yemoja bubble do? Like 90 damage? I fully believe it.
Enough.
There's really not a whole lot of good secure on map, just across the board, so not too surprised. We do see the Wardens pick up that Pyromancer, trying to retrieve the bomb, but Geno doesn't really want that to happen. Trying to decide who will carry the weight of this runic bomb. It shall be Bruno, but an objective now going the way again of the Kaolin Wardens. Still a gold in favor of the Scorpions, but it's still a very tight game.
And RelentlessOne burns the ultimate there after the blue buff invade, and looks like Nog is gravitating toward the right-hand side of the map here, so they might not be out of dodge just yet. They have the numbers advantage. Jump in from Bruno. Damage goes down onto Migiiiiii. Here's the cutoff.
Migiiiiii goes up into the sky, will crawl on away. Still 3 members of the Kaolin Wardens. Will they stick around to claim this tier 1 tower? Looks like no. They're just sort of coming in there. It looks like they will decide to commit to that tower. So, again, a bit of a sunk cost coming in. They did have to spend a lot just to chase away Migiiiiii, but at least they managed to turn that into a tier 1 tower.
They do manage to turn it into at least something, and I think that's kind of where you're at for the Wardens here, because you alluded previously to this double auto-attack backline that the Aaru Scorpions have. You don't want to let this one get away from you. The Jing, the Olorun are very, very strong late-game hyper-carry characters, and that's a backline that's going to be particularly difficult to crack later on. Obviously, we talked about Bruno with the barrier formation is a very good tool to slow down some of that incoming damage, but it doesn't get to and kill them very effectively, as we see Geno actually caught here by some pretty good walls.
Yeah, pretty good walls, and just on relentlessly chasing out this Yemoja, but just such a tough target to lock down. And meanwhile, Picoways in the mid lane dives deep, but too deep, as Migiiiiii will trade them back. It seems like Kaolin Wardens are running a little bit impatient here sometimes. Look to be trying to force these fights where there's really not good opportunities.
But that is kind of what I'm getting at here, Judas, is you feel almost like you're on a timer if you're the Wardens. You're getting to the point of the game where these auto-attackers are getting almost fully slotted in their builds. Both of them have their core power items, their core penetration items online. You can see now Kinsai finished off for Barrow. It's Tahuti finished off for GuyJ. They're going to start hurting more and more. And you've had Geno this entire game with a very open build, as I like to call it, is big damage onto Bruno there. He's got a very open build where early on, not a whole lot of protections. It's Prophetic Cloak, it's Gauntlet of Thebes, it's the Benevolence. Very low prots early, very high prots late. they're making use of it here around the Fire Giant.
Oh, it looks like the Kaolin Wardens are completely unaware. Now, the alarm bells seem to be ringing. It looks like Bruno will be the first on the scene. Can the Nike dive in? No, they cannot. Far, far too late are the Kaolin Wardens, and it looks like the chase will come out from RelentlessOne. No real target to have, but the Aaru Scorpions already get the victory they were looking for, and that's the first Fire Giant of the game, going to the Chaos side.
And they get it pretty peacefully, too. I mean, solo laners trade out both ults, but basically no other damage contested in that engagement, and that's what happens when you have this triple auto attack damage dealer core for the Aaru Scorpions. Arachne, very high DPS on these objectives. Also, hang on a second, what is RelentlessOne doing here?
RelentlessOne is just trying to let, I think, the Kaolin Wardens know that they know that what's going on. But that's a massive River's Rebuke, catches everyone in the River's Rebuke Sanctified Field combo, and GuyJ just blasts down everyone in sight. Now Tubahh to the sky, trying to put out damage onto GuyJ, but GuyJ's healing all the way through it. Tubahh chased out of the action, can't get away. RelentlessOne picks up that kill. Now Evermed and Pyro, the only ones left here. Bruno trying to defend for their support, but the dive just keeps on going. This front line will take a while to go down. It looks like they'll get away, but 3 members of the Kaolin Wardens do fall down. Right lane, Phoenix falls down too. Aaru Scorpions hit the gas pedal.
Migiiiiii unneeded for that engagement, taking down that bird and right. And now, actually, Judas, they've still got very high health bars. They could go for another bird here, potentially. They'll grab the one in mid. I thought, oh, well, actually, I was going to say maybe go for the one in left, but praise be to Tubahh and Evermed for at least keeping their dual lane high enough HP bars on the towers that the Phoenix is not exposed, so they get away with at least keeping that one. But it was an incredible counter engage there from the Chaos team. I mean, you want to talk about things you don't want to fight into? How about an Olorun ult stacked on top of a Yemoja ult? Not only limiting your movement left and right, but also the time dilation. I use that phrasing every time because it's not just slowing you. It is physically changing the amount of time that you're experiencing in that field. So potent, so difficult to fight into. And they thought that they had a great pick onto RelentlessOne. I even said, what is he doing there? Well, apparently baiting for potentially the best counter engage you will see this weekend.
Yep. I mean, we've often discussed in the past, because even when it comes up sometimes in SCC games, the classic Thunderdome combo, right? When you have Odin, you have Zeus, you just put those ults on top of each other. It's easily done. Baby's first bread and butter combo. Yemoja, Olorun ult combo, that's so difficult to have that line up and have it be worth it and have it have 5 people locked in it. Absolutely crazy. It pretty much doesn't get better than that, and it's no surprise that the Scorpions do end up winning that fight just because when you hit something like that, you know, you're going to be at such a disadvantage if you are the order side there trying to fight into that. What are the comms like? Everyone's just panicking like, oh my god, I'm surely going to die. Everyone just scatters like rats from a ship trying to get away, but I mean, it didn't happen this time. They end up losing 2 Phoenixes to the Wardens. It's well, I mean, it's comeback time. How do you turn this one around? Because 23 minutes in, is one of the worst spots you could be in.
Yeah, that's the $1 million question here for the Kaolin Wardens, Judas, is what do you do in a situation where you're down 12,000 gold now at 23 minutes, which, by the way, it wasn't that long ago that we are talking only 1, 2, 3,000 gold. It has exploded to a 12. Look at that, falling off a cliff on the graphs in the last couple of minutes for the Aaru Scorpions. And they need to find something for the Kaolin Wardens to get them back into this game. And I think that it's got to start with shutting down GuyJ. You cannot just outright dive in Olorun unless you have a character like we talked about on the desk. The Camazotz, very proficient at going straight onto the Olorun, forcing out the ult, self-banishing, and then killing him through the ult. You don't get that kind of luxury for the Kaolin Wardens. You need a multiple stage engagement to get GuyJ down without giving him good value of the Olorun ult. You need to make sure that you can get to him, make him uncomfortable enough to use the ult, and then get the disengage from there and go back in once that cooldown is no longer available. Every single time these fights have been going well for the Aaru Scorpions, it's been fighting into the combination of Sanctified Fields and River's Rebuke, and then you have 3 auto attack characters just slamming you down, 4 if you count RelentlessOne. they need to be much more structured with their engagements. It has to be Tubahh poking them out. It has to be Nog constantly threatening them with the potential to invis in and get a pick on one of the backliners. They just keep bashing their heads against the wall. I'm not sure it's going to break open, Judas.
Well, even if they keep trying to bash their heads against the wall, this wall is just closing in. It's like a demon wall, charging forward, and this time it has a Titan attached to it. So still, fire minions down the mid lane, fire minions down the right lane. The Aaru Scorpions pushing in the left lane as Tubahh forced to go to the sky. Not a lot of low health bars to contend with, though, so we'll just have to back on away. Standard retreat. Nog is looping around the backside, like you've mentioned, seeing if they can find an angle, but the Phoenix is already gone. Brace is wide open for the Kaolin Wardens. Picoways tries to deflect back. There is the River's Rebuke, but it will not actually pay off this time. Low value coming out of that ultimate, but the Titan's walking in. Titan wants to go round 2 against the Orc-side Titan, and there is the Sanctified Fields coming on out, but the Titan's just falling so fast, it just burns down. Only 50% HP. The Chaos Titan establishes its supreme dominance over the enemy side and just takes it down very quickly. Very clean game, it turned out, from the Aaru Scorpions. It was close for a while, but looking at the end, it didn't look close at all.
Yeah, I was very confused there for a second, Judas, because I was looking at the wrong Titan's health bar, and I was like, wow, they used Olorun, and they're still not doing any damage to this Titan. But as it turns out, that was the guy from the other side. And you're totally right. I mean, it's a very clean game from the Scorpions. They came in with a game plan of this late-game monster composition that fights very well around these objectives. They got one very early on with the Gold Fury, and then from that point, I mean, sneaking away the Fire Giant was kind of the first and honestly last nail in the coffin for the Aaru Scorpions, because once they got that advantage, they did not forfeit it even one time. It really only came down to that one engagement around the beacon where they stacked the 2 ults and then fought in with the counter engage. And past that point, Judas, I mean, we didn't really see a whole lot of team fighting. It was some scrappy engagements. It was some back and forth. But when it comes to structured 5v5 fighting, the Aaru Scorpions picked their moments and capitalized on them perfectly.
Yeah, it was just down to those couple of key moments, like you mentioned. I think the warning sign for the Kaolin Warden should have been how quickly that first Gold Fury went down, because the first Gold Fury, you know, it was sort of a similar situation to what happened with the Fire Giant. You know, it was there for a moment. All of a sudden, all of the members of the Aaru Scorpion show up, just burn it down quickly, and that should have been where the warning comes out to say, hey, actually, we need to watch out for this Fire Giant, because that same thing could happen. I mean, that's exactly what they opted to do, and yeah, you know, they stuck it away, but it should have been a bit more obvious on that. So maybe, or hopefully, the Kaolin Wardens can learn from that coming into this next game, because, you know, it's still only best of 3 here down in the SEC. They've only got one more game to get it sorted. So yeah, they're going to have to tidy it up a bit.
Yeah, I think that it's going to have to start with addressing the prominence in the duo lane. They left GuyJ basically uncontested over there for a wide period of time. And, you know, I drew the narrative very early on of you got one team plays on one side of the map, one team on the other. But very clearly, the benefit gained from playing around the duo lane side, playing around the Gold Fury side, was just more significant than the Scorpions could, or excuse me, the Weavers could get from the other side of the map on the solo side. I think that you've got to shut down GuyJ. If you give him the Olorun at all, I think that maybe taking that one away wouldn't be a bad look, but something needs to happen differently over there if they want to take away game 2 and force us into a game 3.
I'll have to see if we do get forced into a game 3. We're going to go for a quick break, and we'll be coming back very, very soon with game number 2. All right, welcome back, everybody, to game number 2 between the Kaolin Wardens and the Aaru Scorpions. Of course, we just saw game number 1, which had pretty finely balanced game up until about the 15, 17-minute mark, and then all of a sudden it explodes in favor of the Aaru Scorpions. Now, it was pretty well done up until that point, Kaizo. Would you say that the Kaolin Wardens really have to change much of anything going into game 2?
I would say again that the core tenet of what they need to change is something about the dual lane. I think that Tubahh had a very quiet game over there on the Marty. I don't think Marty was necessarily the problem, but they need something that either pushes their lead a little bit better over there, or in some way allows them to shut down whatever GuyJ is doing on this Olorun. And that can be taking away the Olorun entirely. That can be picking on her or something else that makes him a little bit more uncomfortable in that lane and forcing him to play the game differently. But very clearly to me was the difference between the Aaru Scorpions and the Kaolin Wardens ADC and the impact that they each had on the map. I think that Tubahh needs to pick up the performance, or they need to find some other way to shut down GuyJ.
Makes sense. We'll have to see what adjustments get made by both teams. We head on in to picks and bans, and like you mentioned, the Olorun came through quite early in the draft for the Scorpions. I was very shocked that we didn't see an Anher counter pick. That's sort of like the expected pick. I can see why the Martichoras came through. Like you mentioned, it was a flex pick, being picked third. Also does a similar job to Anher, which is if you get hit in the sanctified fields, you just kind of ult out of it. But
Sure.
GuyJ, based on the draft for the rest of the team, of course, having a Jing in the mid lane, just meant that the Aaru Scorpions weren't looking to play early game. So GuyJ is not even attempting to take these 1v1s because it's just not necessary. So we'll have to see exactly how it goes through. But maybe the Aaru Scorpions are a little bit more afraid of that Tubahh Martichoras than we thought, because they've opted to ban it out.
Yeah, that's an interesting one, because again, I don't think that Tubahh had a large-scale impact on the way that game was played. I do think that it is definitely it's a draft pick as opposed to a gameplay pick. And what I mean by that is it is one where it complicates things significantly more for you during this stage of the game, where you're planning things out, you're deciding what you want to do, you need to know where all the variables are going so you can plan things out accordingly, versus you know what Marty's going to do in the game. He's going to stand very far away and he's going to poke you, and then you're going to get close to him and he's going to go, I'm in the sky now. Like, it is very clear what Marty's going to do in the game. It's much different story here in the picks and bans phase. And I want to know what the Aaru Scorpions are going to go for with this first overall pick, because they had the Pele taken away from them both in game number 1 and now here in game 2. That was our first overall pick, but going back to this Amaterasu for RelentlessOne, who honestly looked untouched on this character for the most part. We had that early gank, he got first blood in that lane, but after that point, Judas, there wasn't really any attention paid over there. He was in a fantasy land of farming waves at the enemy Phoenix line, completely uncontested.
Not underestimate me.
Yeah, did a fantastic job on the armor, so unsurprisingly they pick it up again. But the dream combination of Olorun Yemoja comes on out, this time being played by the Kaolin Wardens. The only notable drop-off here is no Camazotz picked up. Does allow you to hold your jungle pick till later. So would you say that despite Pele being off the table, Camazotz being high priority, is Olorun Yemoja just too good to pass up at the moment?
I think that it gets a lot more value in the set meta here than it ordinarily would. I think that the Olorun Yemoja is very, very good. I think it's even more valuable when you saw just how much value the Aaru Scorpions get out of it. And the fact that Camazotz gets taken away here should be absolutely zero surprise to anybody. This is the perfect character to deal with the Olorun. We even talked about it in game number 1, how this would have been an excellent pick for the Wardens to have to help shut that character down. And now the Wardens get the option to grab the Hades here. I don't know if Bruno has a Hades in the God Pool, but would be a very excellent way to shut down the Ama. Thor, a little ambiguous, could be jungle, could be solo. We've seen it look good in both roles. I do think I would have liked the Hades a little bit better, but definitely a strong pick in its own right.
The option to pick the Hades, of course, it does mean that your damage is maybe a bit heavily stacked in favor of magic.
power, but it's just still open. Thor can go anywhere. Thor can even be played mid. It's not quite the popular thing to do at the moment, but we've seen this with some other assassins, so not too shocking if that was to be seen. Aaru Scorpion's banning out Jingwei. A lot of value on this Jingwei pick. I don't quite see it, and I don't think that sort of bled on over, especially into this current week of SPL. Didn't see any Jingwei to my knowledge, so I'm surprised to see it come out. But standard across the board, but a Neath ban follow Wardens. That's a surprising one to me.
That's cool. I like the Neath ban because I think that Neath mid is criminally undervalued for a long time. It is excellent setup for a very high aggro jungler like the Camazotz. And you get to the point, if you have Neath mid and a high aggro jungler where level 5 you just have the damage to kill somebody. Oftentimes you have a jungler that just barely doesn't meet that threshold of, I dumped all my buttons, I used my auto attacks, they're running away, and I barely missed out on the kill. Well, a Neath would have solved all of those problems for you, and also gives you a way to siege towers pretty effectively, which a Freya composition always has a difficult time with otherwise. I think it would have been a very nice pick here. I don't know if necessarily Bayroneri would have taken that one, but it's definitely showing that the Wardens are thinking very deeply about this one and about what could be their biggest threat to what they're drafting here.
The Cernunnos coming through, again, makes things a bit more ambiguous. Like, you would assume that an Olorun mid is not something you'd expect to see, so it's presumably a Cernunnos in the mid lane, something we haven't seen for quite some time. But Kuzenbo coming in, this god had a real resurgence a few weeks ago. I think in the Salt tournament a while back, it was like a top ban through that entire tournament, and all of a sudden dropped away. But why might that be? Why has Kuzenbo sort of fallen out of favor?
Kuzenbo fell out of favor because the utility of the other supports that came up around him were just too high. You've got, when you're competing with things like Yemoja and the River's Rebuke, it's very difficult to justify getting a character that traditionally plays a much more aggressive dive style game. I think that the Kuzenbo is best served when you're running at an enemy backliner. It's very good into these double ADC compositions, which, wouldn't you know it, the Wardens have right here. And it just makes it so that Olorun has to be a little bit more cautious of where he's throwing around that damage. Usually you want to go Sanctified Field, hold down left mouse until everybody in front of you is either gone or you are dead. While Kuzenbo makes you think twice about maybe not wanting to hit the guy that's knocked up for 6 to 7 business days in a time dilation field, because half of that damage or more is going to be coming back to your own health bar.
All right, well, we'll have to see exactly how these two shape on up against each other as we enter in to game number 2. Now, the Aaru Scorpions, of course, you'd assume coming on in with a bit more confidence. Of course, these are the experienced heads. Now they've got a little bit more SEC experience this current season, so you're feeling good coming into this second game, I feel like, and with the fact that the Kaolin Wardens having to do something a bit different, have put Nog on this Cernunnos in the mid lane, are playing Thor in the solo lane, it feels like, they're the ones already starting at a disadvantage.
I do feel like, though, because of the draft composition that the Kaolin Wardens went for here in game number 2, it speaks more to a playstyle as opposed to a indication of the meta. I don't think that necessarily all of the picks that they have are going to be your top contested pick every game. In particular, things like the Cernunnos mid, the Thor solo, those are comfort picks. Those are things that you feel good when you play, so you're going to play them when things aren't going well for you. And typically when a team is behind and takes a bit of a routing like they did in the second half of game number 1, I like that adaptation of just, let's pick what we know works for us, regardless of what the meta might dictate we should be doing. I think that if they were to make any kind of adaptation, they've made all of the most important ones. They got Tubahh the Olorun instead of having to play against GuyJ playing the Olorun. They're on their comfort picks. They're playing very high aggression early characters that don't have to run the risk of being snowballed on or being stalled out as easily to the late game where the Aaru Scorpions did the majority of their work in game 1. I think this is a much more comfortable composition.
Oh, fantastic aggression on the Bayroneri using the Bastion to body block, but it's not enough. Nog manages to thread the needle and will pick up first blood already for the Kaolin Wardens. And if there was any worries about this second game, already the confidence should be flowing. NotGeno maybe under some pressure, but an early first blood for the Chaos side.
And Judas, I talked my way through that one because I didn't anticipate that Barrow would just outright die to that combination of damage. Obviously, the Cernunnos early damage is very, very high. Susano with those auto attacks weaved in can put out a lot, but I don't know, I kind of figured that everything would be okay, just kind of walk away, and then we'd keep going on about the game state. But instead, he does take the early spill and give some pretty relevant early momentum to the Cernunnos in the mid lane. This is a character that does obviously scale up into the late game pretty well. All of your auto attack centered characters will meet that mark eventually. But Cernunnos is one that can be a bit of a lane bully in the dual lane and can apparently do the same in the mid lane, especially now that he's going to be working with a bit of a lead here.
Migiiiiii and Picoways head on up against each other in the jungle. Bruno smells attention on his blue buff and will immediately bat away. And
Nice.
it seems like everyone's just sort of settling in yet again, apart from Bayroneri not getting settled at all. Again, has to be chased so deep by Nog, but everyone's on their buff rotations. Bayro can't even back. That's a green buff invade from Nog early on. Nog just full of confidence right now.
Yeah, he is absolutely full of Nog in the mid lane, and RelentlessOne takes a wall, but should be able to walk his way out of that one. And again, it's the momentum given to this ADC in the mid lane. They always have higher push pressure early on. They get wave dominance over the mages, and that's just by virtue of the fact that their auto attacks hit harder. Oftentimes they have better base damage as opposed to the scaling damage that the mages traditionally get. It's no surprise that a Cernunnos would be out-pressuring a Morrigan 4 minutes into the game. The surprising thing is that Barrow almost died behind his tier 1 tower, just trying to look into his own jungle. And the Kaolin Wardens need to continue to facilitate Nog's ability to do this. When you get a lead in a volatile matchup like this, where you've got a character that can command an early dominance of a lane, you need to facilitate that, you need to play around that, and develop that into your strong suit. If they immediately shift attention elsewhere and try to translate that lead immediately, I don't think I'd like that as much as just making sure Barrow can't play the game, basically until he's out of time to do anything else.
Yeah, Bayro probably in need of some help, you'd say. Maybe Migiiiiii doesn't want to be the one to have to do that. Of course, has their own intentions with this Camazotz in the jungle. Similarly, though, NotGeno might have to make an earlier rotation to the mid lane, but you're leaving Freya all alone. It's sort of in a bit of a catch-22 here if you are the Scorpions, but you do need to sort it out quickly because, Nog on this Cernunnos already 1-0, can just take off a bit, and if you let this carry in the mid lane take off too quickly, you can find yourself in the late game before you are prepared for it. But already Geno blinking in. This is the type of aggression that we maybe needed, and there is the beads come through. Migiiiiii comes in as well. There's the bat out of hell. The double bats come through. Look at this, sweeping down. Absolute nightmare fuel coming out from the Aaru Scorpions, but it's the exact answer they needed.
You're right, man. That is absolutely nightmare fuel. Like, I think that Nog is going to go to sleep tonight, and then he's going to be seeing that one when he wakes up in 2 a.m. in a cold sweat. Like, that is horrifying. Not only does one Camazotz have the damage to just straight up kill you, but 2 of them swooping at the same time is truly haunting to look at. And, I guess if you're the Aaru Scorpions and you're wondering, wow, Nog is off to this great lead, he's playing very aggressively, what's a good way to shut him down? Maybe 2 Camazotz would be a good answer to that question, Judas.
Yeah, whenever there's a strong god, I've always said the best way to play it is just pick 2 of them. Normally you can't do that, but of course the Morrigan does allow that to happen, and you do need to accept the weaknesses of a Morrigan as well, right? Like, we've seen this early pressure they've been under from Nog, like that is just by virtue of the pick, but I mean, we've immediately seen the strength of it as well. We saw it in game number 1 too, and Nog now in a really tough spot because no beads available for quite some time still. That could just happen again.
It could happen again, and it happened because, I want to point out, Geno, instead of a traditional support relic like you can see Evermed goes for the meditation, Geno on the Kuzenbo goes for an early blink, and blink is very good at giving you pressure in your lanes. It allows you to play around some different timers and make people a little bit more uncomfortable about what exactly you're going to be doing. It's a little bit more ambiguous with your positioning. Is he just walking up to throw a turtle at me, or do I actually have to worry about him potentially blinking on me? But that does fall off a little bit later on. The support relics in Smite are probably the best relics in the game. And obviously you can make a case for Beads Aegis, but all of the Shell, the Meditation, Horrific, Sprint, Frenzy, these are excellent team fight relics that give you prominence in the late game. And Geno's sacrificing a bit of that late game to get themselves to a more comfortable position in the early game. Keep an eye on the turtle throughout the rest of this early and middle game, Judas, because he has to continue to see benefit from this relic. Otherwise, it does eventually fall off for them. And then they're going to be looking down a Kaolin Wardens team with no Horrific Emblem for 2 auto-attack-based characters, no surefire way to negate some of that damage with the shell. It's going to be sketchy for them if Geno can't continue to get the payoff from this one.
Yeah, of course, lacking the inherent safety of a Phantom Shell into a Yemoja, you know, that's almost
that as well.
a guaranteed thing that you need. So lots of options that Geno is missing, but of course already paying off the Blink once. See where else it might pay off. Just scrapping with Picoways and actually coming out on top is not Geno, but this purple buff invade yet again from the Kaolin Wardens. It's clearly something they have intended to do. In fact, also rotating Nog all the way over. Bayroneri's peeking in, but realizes that's just not a spot they can contend with. And now NotGeno in some trouble.
Ball.
Reinforcements on the way, but there's a massive watery grave. Keeps them safe for so long. But the pull into the sanctified fields. Now the swooping comes through from Bayroneri. The health bar on Nog is too low. Trading your support for your mid lane and a purple buff. You're more than happy with that trade, but can GuyJ get out as well? Looks like the Freya will just about manage Pico with a blink. Doesn't quite manage to have enough damage, and that should be that. Overall, a slight win for the Aaru Scorpions, but Migiiiiii wants to go back in.
Migiiiiii does want to go back in. Pico's still very low. Evermed will burn the Meditation just to ward them off. And I love that little shimmy under the tower from Bayroneri there, just standing by the jet stream. Like, what are you going to do? Teleport into my stun in the tower? Yeah, good luck with that one, buddy. And Pico, very wisely, perhaps, elects not to go for it. Migiiiiii actually forced to use the ult there. Didn't see what he was so threatened by, but better safe than sorry. And already Tubahh looks significantly more comfortable in this game than he did in game number 1. Obviously, the Olorun was a big factor in how the Aaru Scorpions commanded their lead and got themselves to the point that they could just sneak away a Fire Giant in game number 1. Now that it's Tubahh on the Olorun and GuyJ electing to go instead for this Freya, things have been a little bit more quiet over there, but once the fighting got to the duo lane, the Sanctified Field comes out, Kaolin Wardens very comfortable in that engagement. And once again, making great use of the rotation potential that Nog gets from this giant lead that he had early on. Because he had so much pressure, because he had so much prominence and priority over the middle lane, he can take very aggressive pathing to get to that purple buff invade incredibly quickly. It was a great River's Rebuke from Evermed there to trap in Geno on this Kuzenbo. They're playing the early game significantly better than game number 1. These are absolutely the adaptations we were looking for from the Kaolin Wardens.
Yeah, so ever so slight lead yet again in this game, this time in favor of the Kaolin Wardens. So not too surprising given the start that they had, but it is only 500 gold. You know, it's still extremely close. We are coming down to small buff invaders. Both soul laners smack each other, but nothing really doing just there. Both pretty tanky so far, but Migiiiiii, whoa, in such a world of pain. Came over early to defend the purple buff and paid the ultimate price.
And he was alone trying to defend that purple buff. Geno's here now, though, got a good flank and misses the grab onto Evermed. That should be the end of it. I'm just not sure what Migiiiiii was doing that far forward without the ult available. I mean, if he has Bat Out of Hell there, he can at least self-banish and probably get out of dodge, but because it was still down for a couple seconds, this gives the Kaolin Wardens a wide berth of time without him on the map.
Oh, the speed that this gets cleared down, but the watery grave goes in, not enough to steal the objective away. Was almost a good play. Hold on, the dunk from Bayroneri, but that might be a mistake. Sanctified Fields have come out. Bayron now giving chase, and there is the lift coming through. It's a pretty good whoop, but there's so much chase down coming through. Tubahh will take the second kill of this fight, and that is all that for Kaolin Wardens. A big gold fury and a big fight after.
And dual lane seems to be the place to be, Judas, because both of these games so far, whichever team has the better grasp around the dual lane seems to be the one coming up on the better end of a lot of these early engagements. Kaolin Wardens go for that early Gold Fury pull, which baits out Geno to make a, I don't want to say interesting because there's a negative connotation with that, but a fascinating, that still doesn't sound right, does it? Whatever. He blinks in, Judas, is where I'm going.
He does.
He blinks in, and it's a low percentage play, but when you're a support early on, your life is not worth very much. And that sounds bad, but it's just a fact of Smite. You're not worth a lot of gold, you're not worth a lot of XP, so throwing your life away there to potentially get that Gold Fury away from the Kaolin Wardens,
and
it's not a high percentage play, again, but it's worth the potential investment that he went for. And it does unfortunately bring Barrow over as well. You can see the Thor ultimate after the Morrigan ult comes in, trying to make something happen there, but instead, it's the Kaolin Wardens coming up on the better end of the entirety of the engagement. And what was about a 1,000 gold lead, maybe a little bit less, has now ballooned to about 3,000 for them over the last couple of minutes. This is pretty reminiscent of how the first game went, where double auto attack composition, pretty quiet in the early game. Then we have one good fight to get them online. So let's see how the Kaolin Wardens can translate their lead and see if they can do it to the same effect that the Aaru Scorpions did.
Yeah, it all depends on if they can find a window to rotate Tubahh all the way over to the right-hand side of the map. Right now, Nog being chased all the way away. And, Evermed just playing Protector a little bit. There's a River's Rebuke comes through perfectly. Catches Bayroneri, who does bat out of hell out of there. Now Bruno's in this fight as well as RelentlessOne. It's a big grouping. Unfortunately, the cycle hits absolutely no one. RelentlessOne goes in with a dazzling offensive. Only gets a stun on Evermed, though. Guys, what's all this fighting over? Come on, can't we all just be friends in this middle lane? But it looks like no. Kaolin Wardens looking for the tower, but RelentlessOne caught on the lazy back, and they'll take the tier 1 tower for good measure.
What a gross crowd control chain, and it is worth bringing up here, Judas, that the Wild Hunt Cernunnos ult does not have diminishing returns with any other form of crowd control. So even after all of those stuns, you had the Thor wall, you had the Yemoja stun, you had the Susano pull, even after all of that hit RelentlessOne, he still has to be a pig for the full duration of being a pig. And he got bursted 100-0 during that period of time. And that's not a good look if you're an Aaru Scorpions fan, because that's supposed to be the tankiest member on your team, the highest level in the game. In fact, at level 15 right now is RelentlessOne. They made short work of him. Looks like Aaru Scorpions are now going to try to push up on the right-hand side, Judas, and try to answer back some of the aggression that the Kaolin Wardens have had, but after losing the Gold Fury, the Pyromancer, and the Tier 1 tower, things are looking very red-favored here, 15 minutes in.
Our first objective off the map in favor of the Aaru Scorpions. It is just a tier 1 tower, though, and still plenty of towers on the map for the Wardens as well. Like, that's, gold on the map already, the Pyromancer and Gold Fury down, so it's just these towers to be looked at. Now, Pico gets a good angle. The GuyJ blinks past the Banish as well. The Aegis comes through. Look at the CC chain. Tons of damage. Pico will detonate that ultimate, and that will be a kill again for the Kaolin Wardens, and another tier 1 tower they take with it.
And that's what happens when you're a Freya without your ultimate ability. That is the only thing preventing people from saying, you know what, we can just outright kill this guy, as Kaolin Wardens once again around the Oni Fury. RelentlessOne is here, and shockingly, Judas, it's enough to force them away by himself.
Yeah, I mean, that armor can be quite scary. He had already used the shield, though, so, surprisingly wouldn't attempt that. That's probably the best opportunity that RelentlessOne would have had, but only Fury half HP yet again. Up with the shield, here comes the dazzling offensive. The Wardens will secure this Oni Fury. It goes from bad to worse for the Scorpions. Just nothing seems to be going their way in this second game.
Yeah, Evermed has looked transformative, by the way, from the Terra to the Yemoja. I made the same case for Tubahh, but it really is both of these dual laners for the Kaolin Wardens look so much more at home, so much more comfortable, and so much more effective on these picks that they have in game number 2 here. The way that Evermed has used these walls so far, you saw that ult over in the right lane, we saw a couple of them here in the middle lane as well, and now 2 in a row to just shut down any potential steal from the Aaru Scorpions is just so incredibly good. And he's just toying with Geno, man.
Geno just wants to go home, dude. Leave him alone. Is he using the med to reach in? He's just toying with... Hold on, this is exactly what we mentioned. Tubahh's made the rotation. It was a bit of games, but it's actually played off. Now, the Sanctified Fields drop down. Migiiiii's nearby. NotGeno lifted up and will fall down. But what about the Fire Giant? The swoops come in from Bayroneri. The Fire Giant will go down, and it will be the Kaolin Wardens who take it. Now, can Bayroneri retreat? They will de-transform. Don't get invisibility for long enough. Double stun, but it's not enough. That is 2 kills and a Fire Giant. The Wardens take a page out of the Aaru Scorpions playbook and take an early fire.
This is incredible, Judas. I just feel
Did
like
we put
I'm
the old
watching
game on?
game number 1 again.
Just swap the names, right?
Other team. It's ridiculous the way that the Kaolin Wardens are doing the exact same playbook as the Aaru Scorpions. I don't know if maybe these guys were scrim partners or something, but very clearly they've both got the exact same game plan in mind for seemingly the exact same composition and working to the exact same amount of effect. I mean, this is about the time where, well, hang on a second, we got some scrapping here in the mid lane. RelentlessOne going in.
Oh, RelentlessOne looking to flip the script and knocks down Picoways. That is a good way to start this fight. Now, GuyJ giving chase. Lots of damage from that Valkyrie's Ascension, but not quite enough damage. But Migiiiiii goes to swoop in as well, but the peel is great from Evermed. That will be that, unless we have a Thor come in from the backside. Bruno thinks better of it. Let's get whooped up, though. I'm not sure if the Aaru Scorpions want to take this fight. There is an objective and the beacon there, but Geno locked down. Lots of damage coming out from Bruno, but not quite enough. This tanky Thor doesn't quite have the burst damage. It will just be a beacon for the Scorpions.
And I like that fight for the Scorpions, because you don't have a whole lot to lose there with what you have expended versus what the Kaolin Wardens used for the Fire Giant. The best way that you can punish these teams for overextending is fighting them while the resources are still down from whatever they did last. They didn't have the Sanctified Fields available. They had some very core components that were missing from their overall team fight and how they want to draw it up that were not available when they went for that beacon. So the Aaru Scorpion said, well, we may be at disadvantage, but we can strip both relics off of Tubahh here. We can absolutely get at least 1 pick from this engagement. And in the event that that doesn't go well for them, they still have to back. The Kaolin Wardens can't just immediately run to the next objective, because Gold Fury's down, Fire Giant's down, Beacon doesn't matter a whole lot, Pyro down. Very low risk, very high value play for them. I like it a lot.
That was a sick little flight there from Bruno to escape, but now the map has really opened up. Lots of towers falling across the board. Still a 5k lead in favor of the Kaolin Wardens, and they're looking to make a play on this right-hand side with the most towers up, but the Aaru Scorpion is not interested in defending it too much. Looking to split across the mid and left side instead, seeing if they can pick up some more value, but that does mean it's the go button for the ones. A fantastic River's Rebuke locks in both frontliners. NotGeno shall fall. RelentlessOne just looking to drag away the minion wave. Looks like at the back, Bruno is trying to defend, but they've already lost 1 tier 1. We'll lose another tier 2 as well. Looks like the right side Phoenix is the call, though, from the Kaolin Wardens. There is no one here to defend. Do they have the damage? It looks like they do, but Pico diving in even further, maybe a touch too far, dashes out somehow alive with the right-hand Phoenix. Meanwhile, Bruno has just locked GuyJ over on this left-hand side of the map. Maybe has to think a bit better of it, but overall, pretty decent for the Scorpions in terms of gold in the pocket, but it's a bigger win for the Kaolin Wardens.
I was just about to say, I'm pretty sure Bruno does not win that 1v1 against GuyJ. He's just trying to keep him there as long as possible. Turnaround here from Nnog, who very clearly does not enjoy being followed needlessly by RelentlessOne. And that's what happens when you get a Freya as your ADC, man. You cannot split push as effectively as a traditional ADC. And Bruno is here by himself for now, but he's got Pico coming.
Oh, that Gold Fury is so low, and it will go the way of the Aaru Scorpions. Been all alone on the left side of the map as Bruno, just trying to fend off the entire world. Does get the teleport out from RelentlessOne, and with the Fire Giant buff despawning from the Kaolin Wardens, that will be that. I feel like the Scorpions, though, on a macro sense, did pretty much whatever they could there to make the best of a bad situation.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, they once again, they took that great engagement in mid, which was pretty much their best opportunity to punish the Kaolin Wardens for what they had already invested. And they do lose the right Phoenix, but honestly, Judas, when you're playing against the Yemoja Olorun composition, those ults are so damn good together. With how far behind the Aaru Scorpions were, it was unlikely they'd be able to hold on to that one in an all-out 5v5 defense to begin with. So the fact that they spread out the map, they get the towers in left, they knock down the towers in mid, that opens up an opportunity for them to counter-end the game. If they get one good wipe at this point, now that the base is at least broken open, they just have to take one Phoenix and walk their way in if they can somehow manage to land the all-out 5v5 fight and get a good wipe. But even if not, they get some very useful gold, useful XP on a lot of members, still hunting down level 20s on just about everybody in the lobby. All of the farm that you can get at this point is still relevant. So they're going to try to spread out the map as much as possible, even with this fire giant spawning here. You can see Barrow try and hunt some down in the mid, but they don't have the time.
There is the River's Rebuke already released, and Geno is solo. Is didn't hit by all of the ultimates, but what do they have left for the fight after the fact? Geno already out. Where does Bruno opt to go? Looks like right onto Migiiiiii, who blinks away fantastically just in the nick of time. Now the space is open for the Kaolin Wardens to begin this fire giant fight, but RelentlessOne instead seems to be the target. It's a split call from the Wardens. They're not quite sure what to do. They've opted to chase for these kills instead. They can stagger the timers of the respawns. Maybe that'll benefit them. RelentlessOne is so dead. They are deader than a dead thing unless the Riptide bounces Bruno away somehow. RelentlessOne will escape and buy even more time. NotGeno's gonna respawn. We could be back where we were, but the Kaolin Wardens pull the fire.
They're pulling. Migiiiiii is still here. Barrow's behind them, and they get some good damage off. At least force the Camazotz away, but Judas, they don't look comfortable anymore. I mean, they're shifting off to the Pyromancer.
Yeah, shifting to the easier objective. Will manage to secure it. Migiiiiii jumps in, starting to swoop at any target they can. Nog's not taking a lot of damage, but Barrow finds a great angle on the backside. The double Camazotz again coming through, but it's split over both backliners. A fantastic stun onto Tubahh, but it's not quite enough. Migiiiiii will finally take down Nog, and now all of a sudden it's turning on the way for Kaolin Wardens. Tubahh falls down to GuyJ from the sky. Looking really, really rough at this point. Kaolin Wardens are in full retreat mode. Fantastic ult from Bruno, but they're just trying to get away. They cannot. It is 5-on-2. What is the call? The call is to go for the Fire Giant. A fantastic fight for the Aaru Scorpions.
And that was a long time coming, Judas. Well, hang on a second. The Aaru Scorpions, first of all, seem to be losing their right-hand side Phoenix because they didn't send anybody to back for that. Probably don't need it, but would have liked to have had it. But that fight was a long time coming because you had Barrow pushing up those waves in mid lane, threatening the Phoenix, threatening a wraparound for, honestly, a good 30 seconds to a minute straight, uncontested. And by the time that fight found its way north, you saw everybody dumping every cooldown in the books into Tubahh. He had to turn around and realize that Bayroneri was already a Camazotz behind him, just waiting to be the shadow lurking in the darkness to fight him one more time and prevent that escape route from being available to him. The Aaru Scorpions were very patient there. I mean, they did an excellent job of flushing the Kaolin Wardens out of the pit even after losing Geno, because don't forget, all of that begins with the Kaolin Wardens dumping 3, if not 4 ultimate abilities into NotGeno just to take the Kuzenbo off the map. And the Aaru Scorpions somehow managed to hang on to their health bars and keep them off the pit long enough that Geno can respawn, make his way back up into that fight, and they can get to Tubahh once again with these double Camazotz ults that have been making it so difficult for him to position. Because between double swooping bats and the relentless assault from RelentlessOne, or Dazzling Offensive, whatever it's called, the Amaterasu ult, Judas, that is also going down onto Tubahh, it's just so much for him to deal with. And he's looked, once again, incredible here in game number 2. But at some point, it's just an indomitable force from the Aaru Scorpions. And they've made it very clear that as long as they take out Tubahh, they're not really bothered by how the rest of the fight goes.
That was really tough, and you mentioned right before that fight all kicked off that the Kaolin Wardens really didn't seem comfortable anymore, and they didn't, and you can understand why they would stick around, but they really weren't sure exactly where all the members of the Aaru Scorpions were. Maybe wards were despawning around them because they'd been quite some time. Of course, no ultimates ready. I think maybe that would have been the time for Kaolin Wardens to just reset and maybe take it a bit slower, but instead find themselves facing all 5 of the Aaru Scorpions barreling down their front door.
They are, and now we got the teleport here as well from RelentlessOne. Titan is here and in force, so that's one more thing to contend with. This is not going to be an easy defense for the Kaolin Wardens, but they've got to hold on here. They cannot afford to let their base get broken open.
Well, into the Phoenix steps the Titan. NotGeno misses with the blink, but Nog uses the beads anyway, deflecting out all of the damage that they can. River's Rebuke is good. Locks RelentlessOne in and stops all of the aggression. The Titan will fall down while the Phoenix stays up, but there's a good ult in from Bruno. Doesn't quite connect with all the damage they need. Double stun as well onto the front line. Left side Phoenix lives for now, but it looks like there might be a re-engage coming from the Aaru Scorpions. Certainly not done yet with all this Fire Giant buff left.
Still a couple of ults available, namely that Sanctified Field still available for Tubahh here, so keep an eye on him and how he uses that cooldown as they go for the base again.
Going back in, lifted to the sky, doesn't even have a chance to use anything, does Nog, but there's the Sanctified Fields shutting down this fight. Geno lifted to the sky for a long time yet again, and finally does fall down to Pico, but it's Migiiiiii in the backside, takes down Nog, hunting down Tubahh. Tubahh so low, can they stay alive? Still firing back, but not quite enough. Migiiiiii with the double kill, slicing through everyone. They finally do get the left side Phoenix, do the Aaru Scorpions, and it looks like they want to re-engage onto this mid Phoenix. It is a 3-on-4 engagement. The Kaolin Wardens need to be careful. They might not lose just the Phoenix. They might end up losing the entire game.
And the Aaru Scorpions make one mistake with the right-hand Phoenix, but will not be letting that one go down a second time in a row. They'll back off and make sure that they get that one down. And it's such a smart play from Bayroneri, and I'm sure all of the Aaru Scorpions helped to coordinate that one, to use the Morrigan ult into the Olorun ult, just to make sure you can shut down that Sanctified Field. Tubahh wants to pop that cooldown and then stand very safely, squarely in the middle of it, or toward the back, depending on how the fight is structured, and make sure nobody can get close to him and he gets all of the value from it. But because Bayroneri shifts into an Olorun of his own, drops his own Sanctified Field, that allows the re-engage from the Aaru Scorpions after they're forced to back up from Tubahh's ult, and also gives them some very necessary damage on those Phoenixes. If you don't have a Runic Bomb, if you don't have a traditional ADC, it can be very difficult to break into these Phoenixes, because Freya is just not going to be doing the in-hand damage required to bring those ones down. But because Bayro transforms into Tubahh, has a whole lot of auto attack damage, that one goes down much more smoothly, and even prevents a re-engage from the Kaolin Wardens there on sort of a stage 3, stage 4 of the fight. It prevents them from walking back up and trying to flush them out during that critical time that Bayroneri was DPSing the Phoenix and left. And now the Kaolin Wardens, even after having their base broken open, Judas, seem to be pretty comfortably positioned around this Fire Giant. They do have the waves to contend with and left, but at least for the time being, they're the ones calling the shots.
Will almost certainly be an enhanced Fire Giant when it finally falls, but it is already at 50% HP. This draws in the Aaru Scorpions. The fight is again very spread out, very wide. Now there is the ticking time bomb of this left side Phoenix being down for quite some time. Kaolin Wardens, Picoways does a lot of damage, forces Migiiiiii up into the sky. Cyclone, where will it go? Will fire in the backline. Very low health for Aaru Scorpions. It looks like RelentlessOne might be the new target. Bruno all the way on the backside. Ton of damage onto Migiiiiii. Still not quite enough. A massive watery grave hitting all 4 members still left alive. And Nog so low. Can they retreat from Bayro? No, they cannot. But Bayro finds himself in a tough spot after the fact. Now the fight continues on this right-hand side. RelentlessOne swinging away. Pico blinks in, gets the beads from Migiiiiii. Goes back in for the damage. Pulls them all the way in, lets them light up and fall, and that will be more fighting going through. But Bruno now solo, because GuyJ is slamming hard from the backside, but not quite finding these last couple of health bars. Bruno's just gonna back right in the middle of the fight and try to TP right back in, but the damage offensive comes out. There's a big stun and a kill onto Tubahh. GuyJ still swinging, still has tons of damage. Pico comes back for the re-engage and does swipe down the big damage dealer of this Freya. Bruno back on scene, can't peel away. RelentlessOne is a big shutdown on the Picoways. A massive back and forth fight. It is 3 for 3. Only the frontliners remain for both sides.
And what a chaotic fight it was. And the thing that stands out to me at the end of that fight, Judas, is the trust that Bruno clearly has in Picoways, because these two have been playing together for a... Wait, can We'll see if RelentlessOne can just outright do this in the background, but Bruno teleports back in toward the back end of that engagement, and the entire time that he's teleporting back in, GuyJ is just slamming people with Freya auto attacks. And Picoways is the one dealing with him the entire time. Bruno says, I know my teammates got that. I'm going to walk away and make sure the Kuzenbo can't step back up. I think that if you have people that are less, well, it looks like you can do it. If you have people that are less experienced with one another and don't have that kind of trust, you probably don't divide your forces quite like that. And you make sure that whatever you do, that Freya has to die in that short period of time. A lot of trust between these guys on the Kaolin Wardens, and it's working out pretty well for them so far. You can see as well that Evermed is making a lot of space for Tubahh to work with. Nnog gets caught a little bit too far forward in that engagement that time around. He's been sitting pretty comfortably far back, but that time, unfortunately, gets caught in the watery grave by Geno, and all of the garbage damage that Migiiiiii and RelentlessOne are pumping out together in the middle. But it does mean that Bayroneri needs to be involved to get those kills. It's not enough of a kill threshold without the additional damage from the mid laner, so Bayro has to dive deep, trades himself out for Nnog, and then all hell breaks loose, Judas. It is going to be interesting to see how this next fight goes, because that one was quite one to watch.
Well, round 2, and the Aaru Scorpions have the Fire Giant at 50% HP. The Kaolin Wardens are nearby, but not really looking to build up too much of a defense just yet. Picoways lurking by. Fire Giant is about 25%. The River's Rebuke comes through, and Pico is already out before the start of the fight. Now the Sacrifice Fields have come down. Who will get the Fire Giant? It will go down in favor of the Kaolin Wardens, but the fight afterwards is more important. Bayro now. Bruno getting lit up by GuyJ and does fall down. There's only 2 members left alive, and the chase is coming out from the Aaru Scorpions. The banish is fantastic. Evermed now trying to retreat. Nnog trying to dish out whatever damage they can, but it is not going to be enough to save the support. It is all onto the back of Nnog, who's getting locked down by the front line. Migiiiiii giving even more chase. The Aegis, can they find their way to the fountain? They can, but now it's got all 5 members squaring up to them. How can they possibly defend? The Titan is just falling so fast. GuyJ is blasting the shots into the back. That will be that. Aaru Scorpions shall take down the Kaolin Wardens. 15 kills to 15. It was 33 minutes, and they didn't even get the enhanced Fire Giant at the end. But more importantly, they got the victory.
Yeah, and they do it the easy way in game number 1, where it's very quiet and then everything goes well and goes their way for the entire game. And they do it the hard way there, too, in game number 2, which is so much more impressive. Smite is very difficult to play from behind. That's obviously the intent of getting ahead, is that it makes things easier for you. And the Wardens, they had their backs against the wall there in game number 1. The fact that they somehow managed to claw their way back from an 18-minute Fire Giant that looked like they could have gotten just about everything save of the game for the Kaolin Wardens was very impressive to me. The Scorpions just didn't get the same value out of their Fire Giant that the Wardens did in game 1. I think that if you compare the two side by side, because again, the composition's very similar, the beginning and middle stages of both of those games very similar. It's the way that the Wardens played from behind was so much more, the word I want to use is veteran, than the Aaru Scorpions. And that kind of feels like the tail of the set here, because even in that last Fire Giant engagement, you could tell there was no desire from the Wardens whatsoever to actually get the Fire Giant. They were just baiting the Scorpions forward, making them all in commit to getting the Fire Giant because, oh, it's, you know, it's enhanced Fire Giant. It's the biggest buff on the map. We need to make sure that goes in our favor. But the entire time, the Wardens were just pounding them with damage. And while the Scorpions wasted all their resources trying to get the objective, the Wardens just dumped everything into the opposition and walked away with 4 kills chasing Nnog into Fountain. It was an excellent fight, well drawn out from the Wardens.
Yeah, it did fantastically, of course, and it ends up with a victory. And that's, at the end of the day, what you're looking for. You know, if you don't get the early objectives, if you don't get the later objectives, it's all irrelevant as long as you can pull together to get the victory. But I believe that is it for the night. It's been close. It's been some really hotly contested games, but at the end of the day, you know, you pull it together like that, you get the 2 wins, and you are in a great spot. So that will be that from us today. I've been Judas Priestley, joined by Kaiser. We've also had Printers and Rosie on the background helping us out. We'll be back in, what is that? About 11 hours time? 11 hours time for the EU SCC first game. I'll be there. Kaiser, I imagine you'll still be sleeping.
I will absolutely be getting every minute of sleep I can, man, and then I'll see you about an hour or two after.
Bright and early at our new time slot of, I believe, 7 a.m. Eastern. So yeah, right. Tune in for that one. That's also going to be fantastic. But it's been great fun here today, and we're hoping to see a lot more of these two teams, see what they can show us. But for that, good night.